Captain Jenna Carter was presumed dead after a deadly crash until a mysterious signal shattered the silence, revealing the truth. She's alive, and the world's about to learn her dark secret. The hangar was bustling with activity as the sun began to rise over the airstrip. The sharp hum of engines echoed in the distance, a reminder that another mission was underway. Captain Jenna Carter, standing beside her F-22, felt the familiar weight of anticipation settle in her chest. Her hands moved with precision, checking the systems one last time. She'd done this 100 times before, but each mission still felt like the first. "Everything good, Captain?" Sergeant Dave Thompson, her mechanic, called out as he approached, his eyes scanning the jet. "All systems go," Jenna replied, her voice steady but tight. She didn't need to say more. Dave knew her well enough to read the look in her eyes. There was something in the air today. A mix of tension and unease that neither of them could ignore. Jenna wiped the sweat from her forehead, feeling the heat of the day creeping in. She glanced at the horizon, where the sky was painted in shades of orange and purple. Beautiful, but also foreboding. She wasn't sure why, but something about this mission felt different. "You ready?" Dave asked, his voice softer now. Jenna took a deep breath, letting the moment settle in. "Always," she said with a quick smile, even though her mind was elsewhere. She turned toward the cockpit, her boots thudding against the concrete as she walked. She climbed into the jet with practiced ease, the cockpit familiar and comforting. The coolness of the metal around her felt like home. Her gloved fingers brushed over the controls, flicking switches, testing instruments. Everything was in order. She adjusted her helmet and slid it into place, her face hidden behind the reflective visor. "Captain Carter, you're cleared for takeoff." "Proceed to mission area," came the voice of command over the radio. It was crisp and impersonal, but Jenna knew the weight of it. This was a routine operation. Or so they said. The kind of mission that didn't usually end with a hero's welcome. "Copy that," Jenna replied, her voice a calm contrast to the nervous flutter in her stomach. Her pulse was steady, but she knew better than to ignore the feeling gnawing at her gut. Her F-22 roared to life, the engines shaking the ground beneath her as she taxied down the runway. She wasn't one for superstition, but the feeling in her chest remained. This one wouldn't be like the others. She adjusted the throttle and lifted into the air, the world below shrinking as the jet cut through the sky. "All right, let's do this," she murmured to herself, though no one could hear it but the wind. The mission was simple, reconnaissance over enemy territory. She wasn't expected to engage, just gather intel and return. But Jenna's mind was already thinking a few steps ahead. The real danger wasn't in the flight itself, it was in what they might find. The intel they'd been sent for wasn't just routine. Someone had been watching them. As she leveled off, her eyes scanned the horizon, every muscle in her body coiled with awareness. The cockpit was quiet now, save for the soft hum of the jet's engine and the faint crackle of radio chatter. But that quiet wouldn't last. The air grew thick, and Jenna's eyes narrowed as the distant blips on her radar signaled a change. The mission had just begun, but already, she could feel the shift. Something wasn't right. And deep down, she knew it was too late to turn back. Before she could process what was happening, a sudden flash of light struck her jet. Everything went black. The moment the missile hit, Jenna didn't have time to react. 1 minute, she was cruising above the jungle, the world sprawling beneath her, and the next boom. The explosion shook the plane violently. Her heart raced as her body slammed against the seat. The world around her spun out of control. "Shit," she whispered, gripping the controls as the jet tilted sharply to the left. Her hands were numb, her mind scrambling to process what had just happened. The cockpit warning lights blinked red, blaring at her in panic. Engine failure. Fuel loss. She punched a button, trying to activate the emergency systems, but nothing happened. The dashboard flickered, then went dark. Come on," she muttered through clenched teeth. The plane was spiraling. She could hear the wind howling outside the fuselage, a sound that now felt like it was closing in on her. Her stomach lurched as the altitude dropped fast. This is it. This is the end. But no, she couldn't think like that. Not yet. Through the haze of fear and confusion, Jenna forced herself to focus. Think. Stay calm. She scanned the instruments. Her fingers flew over the buttons, desperate to regain control. The jet's engines were a mess, smoke pouring from one of the wings. The G-force pressed her into the seat, blurring her vision. Sweat trickled down her forehead, her heart pounding louder than the engine's failure. She looked out of the window, hoping to get a sense of her surroundings. The dense jungle below was a sea of green, moving closer by the second. Her pulse quickened. The ground was rushing up too fast, too soon. Mayday, mayday, this is Captain Jenna Carter. I'm going down, she barked into the radio. But her voice was shaky, the static making it hard to tell if anyone had even heard her. She tried again, but the words came out wrong, weak. Her throat felt tight. Focus. You're a fighter. You've been through worse. The nose of the plane dipped lower, and the trees below grew more distinct. She gripped the controls harder, willing herself to stay conscious. The GS were relentless, trying to pull her under. But she fought back, her hands trembling but steady. The radio crackled one last time, the faint voice of her squadron leader coming through. Carter, do you copy? We've got a lock on. The words cut off as the jet shook again, this time even harder. Jenna felt the jet lurch, a jarring impact that sent a wave of pain through her chest. Her vision blurred, the world spinning as the plane continued its descent. The last thing she saw before the ground swallowed her up was a mass of trees closing in too fast, too close. I'm sorry. Her final thought was a fleeting one, drowned out by the violent crash. Jenna's world went black. When Jenna opened her eyes, the first thing she noticed was the pain. Her body screamed in protest, but her mind had already shifted into survival mode. The jet was in pieces, scattered across the jungle. She had to move. Jenna's breath came in shallow gasps, her head pounding as she regained consciousness. The jagged remnants of her F-22 lay scattered around her, twisted metal and burning debris. The smell of smoke filled the air, thick and acrid, but beneath it, the damp, earthy scent of the jungle pressed in. It was strange how something so natural could feel so suffocating. She blinked rapidly, trying to clear the fuzziness in her vision. Focus, she told herself. She could feel the pain now, sharp and insistent. Her left arm was pinned beneath a piece of the wreckage, her leg bent at an odd angle. But it wasn't the pain that kept her frozen. It was the silence. The kind of silence that presses down on you, like the world holding its breath. With effort, Jenna twisted her wrist and freed her arm. The movement sent a wave of pain through her chest, but she fought it off. I'm not done yet, she muttered to herself. Her voice sounded weak, even to her, but it was enough to shake off the lingering fog. She pushed herself up, gritting her teeth as she looked around. The crash site was chaotic. The F-22 was nothing more than a twisted heap of metal, but Jenna wasn't interested in the wreckage. She needed to move. The jungle stretched endlessly before her, thick trees and dense undergrowth. She could hear the distant sounds of birds and insects' life, but not the life she was used to. All right, she whispered, swaying as she tried to stand. One step at a time. She limped toward the remains of her jet, trying to make sense of the mess. The survival kit had to be somewhere. It had to be. Her head spun as she stumbled, but she couldn't stop. Not yet. The longer she stayed here, the more exposed she became. The enemy would come eventually, and she couldn't let them find her. Finally, her fingers brushed the edge of the survival pack. She yanked it free, her body shuddering with relief. The weight of the pack in her hands was small comfort, but it was something. It held enough food, water, and basic first aid to keep her going for a while. She tore open the pack and pulled out a water bottle, drinking greedily. The cool water felt like life itself, but it barely quenched her thirst. Think. She needed shelter, and she needed to get her bearings. She couldn't stay in the open, not with the wreckage marking her location. The jungle would have to be her ally for now. After taking a few more shaky steps, she found a cluster of thick vines that formed a sort of natural barrier. She leaned against it, gasping for breath. Her leg ached with every movement, but she couldn't stop now. She needed to find safety. Looking up, she noticed a slight break in the trees, a clearing that might offer a better view of her surroundings. She had to get to it. Just a little further, she whispered, half to herself, half to the world she was trapped in. She staggered forward, her body screaming, but she kept moving. The jungle pressed in around her, but Jenna didn't slow down. Every step felt like a fight, but she wasn't going to give up. Not now. Not when there was still hope. As she stumbled into the clearing, Jenna paused for a moment, her breath coming in ragged gasps. There was no time to rest. The hardest part was yet to come, surviving out here alone. But she was still alive, and that was all that mattered. Jenna's world had become small. The jungle was her prison and her protector, its thick foliage swallowing her whole. The days blurred together, each one a struggle, a fight to stay one step ahead of the enemy. She never let herself forget the reality of her situation. There was no rescue coming. No mission support. Just her and the dense, suffocating green that surrounded her. She had found a small cave tucked beneath a cluster of massive trees. It was concealed enough to avoid detection, yet close enough to the crash site to scavenge. Jenna spent her days moving between the wreckage, searching for anything useful: water, food, scraps of fabric to make a bandage. She found a few old ration bars from her survival kit, but they did little to quiet the gnawing hunger that kept her awake at night. At night, the jungle came alive. Insects hummed, and the sounds of distant animals echoed in the darkness. She could never shake the feeling that she wasn't truly alone. The enemy was out there. Somewhere. Watching. Hunting. Jenna sat against the cold rock of the cave, staring at the small fire she'd managed to start. The light flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. It reminded her of home, the fire pit in the backyard of her small cabin, where her father used to tell stories about his time in the military. The crackling wood had always been a comfort back then, but tonight, it felt different. The warmth wasn't enough to chase away the cold loneliness that had settled in her bones. She closed her eyes, listening to the steady beat of her own heart. I can't stop now. In the stillness, her mind wandered back to her old life, before the mission. To the days when everything felt certain. When she was just Jenna Carter, fighter pilot, with her whole future ahead of her. I should have called, she muttered to herself, the words slipping out before she could stop them. It was a guilt she couldn't shake, no matter how far she ran. She had left things unfinished, promises unspoken. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. You'll always have a home to come back to, kid. Home. The word had become a distant echo now. She couldn't even remember the last time she'd stepped inside the little house on the outskirts of Kansas, the one with the worn-out welcome mat by the door. Her mother had always kept it tidy, but her father's cluttered garage was where Jenna had spent most of her free time as a kid. Fixing things. Learning. Her eyes flickered open, and she glanced toward the entrance of the cave. The jungle stood silent, waiting. The past was a luxury she couldn't afford, not out here. Every thought was a distraction. Every memory a risk. She couldn't afford to let her guard down. She was alone in a hostile place, surrounded by a world that felt like it was closing in. But still, she let her fingers touch the worn photograph in her jacket pocket, the one of her and her father, standing by the old plane he used to fly. The photo was yellowed with age, corners bent, but it was all she had left. She tucked it back inside her jacket and stood up. There were no more distractions. She had to survive. As the night deepened, Jenna couldn't sleep. Her thoughts were too loud, her body too restless. Tomorrow, she would head further into the jungle, try to find a better vantage point, something that could give her hope. But she couldn't escape the gnawing feeling, the sense that someone, or something, was getting closer. The morning light cut through the dense jungle, casting long shadows over the tangled undergrowth. Jenna had been awake for hours, unable to rest. Her body was a constant ache, but the worst was the gnawing, empty feeling deep inside her. Was this it? She wondered. Was this where it all ended? She pushed the thought away, focusing instead on the task ahead. She had to keep moving. Find a way out. She gathered the last of her supplies and strapped her survival pack over her shoulders. The jungle was quieter this morning, no birds, no insects buzzing in the thick air. Just the rustle of leaves as the wind stirred, as if the jungle itself was holding its breath. Jenna made her way toward the ridge that overlooked a narrow stream she had discovered days ago. It was a small stream, but it gave her a sense of direction. If she followed it far enough, maybe she could find a path or, better yet, someone. As she moved through the brush, her boots crunching softly beneath her, Jenna kept her senses sharp. The days were growing longer, and every noise seemed louder, every movement more pronounced. She could feel the weight of the jungle pressing in, trying to swallow her whole. But she refused to let it. She reached the ridge and looked down at the stream. The water was running clear, the sun reflecting off the ripples. She knelt by the bank, pulling out the last of her water and refilling her bottle. She drank deeply, trying to calm the restlessness in her chest. For a moment, she let herself sit back and close her eyes. The world felt far away. It had been so long since she had felt anything but the harshness of survival. What if they're not coming for me? The thought crept into her mind, a cold whisper. But Jenna shook it off. No, I'm still alive. That's what matters. She pulled herself to her feet and looked around again. Something felt different. A crackle. She froze, her heart racing. At first, she thought it was her mind playing tricks on her. But no, it was real. A faint, distant sound. Her hand immediately went to her broken radio, lying in her pack. The transmission was barely audible, the static grating against her eardrums, but there it was, a voice, faint but unmistakable. Mayday. This is Captain Jenna Carter, Mayday. Jenna's breath hitched. Her pulse quickened, and her fingers trembled as she turned the radio dial, trying to clear the static. Captain Carter, do you copy? Came the voice again. Jenna, is that you? I'm not hearing this. The disbelief hit her like a physical blow. Yes, she whispered, almost too softly to hear herself. Her heart hammered in her chest as she pressed the button again. Yes, this is Captain Carter. The voice on the other end didn't hesitate. Jenna, it's you. We've got your signal. We've been searching for you. Just hold on, we're coming. We're coming for you. For the first time in what felt like forever, Jenna felt something stir deep within her, a flicker of hope. The weight of isolation that had held her down for so long began to lift, replaced by something she hadn't felt in months. They heard me. They're coming. She could hardly believe it. She looked up at the sky, as if the very thought of rescue could part the clouds. Just hold on, the voice continued. We'll be there soon. Jenna pressed the radio to her chest, the faint hum of the transmission still crackling in her ear. Copy that. I'll be waiting. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself a small smile. As Jenna listened to the radio, the reality of the situation hit her. She wasn't out of danger yet, but there was a chance. Just a chance. And she would hold on to that hope with everything she had. The radio crackled again, pulling Jenna from the haze of hope she'd allowed herself to feel. Her hand gripped the small device, her knuckles white. The voice on the other end was crisp, urgent. Captain Carter, this is command. We've got your signal locked. F-22s are en route. Sit tight. Do not engage until you've made visual contact. Do you copy? Jenna blinked, her heart racing once more. She nodded, even though she knew no one could see her. Copy that, she responded, her voice hoarse but steady. I'll wait. Her eyes darted to the thick jungle ahead, the oppressive weight of the trees pressing in. The sound of distant bird calls filled the air, but her focus remained on the faint hum of the radio. The silence between transmissions felt endless. Every rustle of leaves, every crack in the earth beneath her boots made her jump. Stay calm. Just stay calm. She adjusted her position near the ridge, trying to make herself as small as possible, trying to hide from the world that had once been her battlefield, but now seemed so far away. She could hear the roar of the jungle around her, feel the heat rise in waves from the ground. But above all that, she could almost hear the sound of the F-22s approaching. The minutes dragged by, each one stretching longer than the last. Jenna's body was a mass of aches and bruises from the crash, but her mind was sharp, focused. She had to be. There was no room for hesitation. And then it came. The unmistakable whine of fighter jets cutting through the air. Her heart lurched in her chest. She stood up, moving to the edge of the clearing, her eyes scanning the skies above. Her breath caught as she spotted the two F-22s soaring over the treetops, their sleek bodies slicing through the clouds. "They're here," she whispered to herself, the words a prayer, a promise. She held her breath, watching the jets as they made a sharp turn. The moment had come. The roar of their engines grew louder as they closed in, the speed of the jets making the air vibrate. Jenna's fingers hovered over her radio again, ready to send a signal if needed. Her eyes were locked on the F-22s, trying to steady her nerves. She wasn't sure if it was the heat or the anxiety making her feel dizzy, but she fought it back. One of the jets broke off from the formation and circled back toward her, descending in a smooth arc. Jenna's pulse quickened. She could barely believe this was real. The sound of the approaching fighter, so close now, sent a chill through her spine. They weren't just here to check on her. They were here to intercept. As the F-22 locked onto her position, she couldn't help but feel a strange mix of relief and tension. This is it, she thought. They were so close now. Her heart pounded louder than the jet engines as her voice broke through the crackling static. "This is Captain Jenna Carter. I'm here. I'm alive. Please, I need confirmation." "Is it really you?" she asked, her voice shaking despite her best effort to sound calm. The radio crackled for a moment before a voice came through, clear, calm, and almost too familiar. "Carter, it's us. We've got you." Jenna could hardly believe it. She wasn't alone anymore. But as the fighter jet circled above her, Jenna's thoughts went beyond survival. What had she really survived? What secrets had she uncovered that might change everything? The F-22 circled once more, its engines roaring overhead, sending a gust of wind through the thick trees. Jenna stood frozen, her eyes trained on the jet. For a moment, everything felt surreal. The jungle around her, the familiar hum of the aircraft, the weight of the past months, all of it felt like a dream. "Is this real?" She swallowed hard, her throat dry. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt such raw, intense relief mixed with something else, something heavy. Her hands trembled slightly, but she fought the urge to reach for the radio again. She knew what she had to do. "They're here." But the real question was, why? "Carter, do you copy?" The voice over the radio was clear now, but it was still tinged with disbelief. It was one of the F-22 pilots. Jenna recognized it. The static faded, and the calm voice continued. "This is Captain Jackson. We're in position. Can you confirm your identity?" Jenna paused for a moment, staring at the jet above her. The sudden sense of being caught between two worlds, a past she had left behind and the dangerous, uncertain future ahead, hit her all at once. "I'm Captain Jenna Carter," she said, her voice firm despite the knot in her stomach. I've been out here for months. I'm not the enemy. I'm alive." There was a long pause. A deep breath crackled through the static. "We never thought we'd hear that name again." Captain Jackson's voice came through, low but intense. "You were presumed dead after the mission went south." "I know," Jenna answered quietly. "But I wasn't. I never was." The weight of her own words seemed to settle in the air between them. Jenna closed her eyes briefly, remembering the night of the crash. The sharp jolt. The spiraling descent. The endless darkness that had swallowed her whole. She had survived, yes, but the cost had been steep. "I know what you're thinking," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I know I shouldn't have gone dark. But you need to understand. I had to. There are things I uncovered. Things that were never meant to be found." There was a sharp intake of breath from the other side, but Jackson didn't interrupt. He knew, he understood. Jenna could feel it in the silence that followed. "They've been watching us for years," she continued, her words coming out in a rush now. The mission wasn't just about reconnaissance. It was about uncovering something inside the ranks. People inside the U.S. military were working with the enemy. She stopped, her chest tightening with the weight of her revelation. "I uncovered a conspiracy." The radio was quiet for a long moment, and Jenna's pulse thudded in her ears. She could almost hear the F-22 pilots processing what she had said. Then Captain Jackson spoke, his voice steady, but tinged with disbelief. Are you saying the mission was a cover-up? And you were left behind because of it? Jenna clenched her jaw. That's exactly what I'm saying. The air around her seemed to grow thicker as the magnitude of what she had uncovered settled in. She wasn't just a pilot. She wasn't just a survivor. She was now a messenger, a reluctant bearer of a truth that could change everything. What happens now? She asked, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Her throat felt tight as she held her breath, waiting for an answer. Captain Jackson's response was calm but heavy with resolve. We get you out of there, Carter. And then we start talking about what's next. Jenna's heart beat faster. She wasn't alone anymore. But she wasn't free either. As the F-22s circled once more, Jenna's mind raced. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. The truth she carried now had the power to unravel everything. But the question was, would anyone believe her? Jenna's heart raced as she sat on the ground, her back against a moss-covered tree, staring up at the F-22s circling above her. The air felt heavier now, charged with the weight of what she had just revealed. She had lived in the shadows for so long, hiding from the truth, hiding from herself. But now that she had spoken it aloud, the truth felt even more dangerous. More real. Captain Carter, do you copy? The voice crackled through her radio again. It was Captain Jackson, his voice steady but filled with something else, urgency. We need you to clarify something. This conspiracy you uncovered, who's behind it? And why the hell weren't we told? Jenna's chest tightened at the question. She had spent months, years even, piecing together bits of information, following a trail of secrets that led her here. There had been whispers in the dark, coded messages, strange patterns in military operations. But the deeper she dug, the more she realized that the conspiracy wasn't just a few rogue elements. It was bigger than she ever imagined. She closed her eyes for a moment, gathering her thoughts. She could feel the sweat trickling down her spine, the weight of her words pressing down on her. It's not just one person, she finally said, her voice low but firm. It's an entire network. A group of high-ranking officials, both military and civilian, who've been feeding intelligence to the enemy. They've been compromising missions, guiding their attacks. Everything we thought we knew was a lie. She paused, letting the gravity of her words settle. The F-22s were silent above her now, as if the pilots were waiting for her to continue. The jungle around her seemed to quiet, as though it, too, was holding its breath. I found evidence, Jenna continued, her voice shaky but resolute. It's in the intel I gathered. I had to go dark because I knew what would happen if I stayed in contact. They'd find me. And if I had kept going, they would have killed me. I'm the last person who knows the whole truth. The radio buzzed briefly before Captain Jackson's voice came through again, a bit more urgent. Carter, we're talking about treason. Are you telling me the U.S. military is being compromised at the highest level? Jenna swallowed hard. Yes, she said, her voice cracking. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. These people, they've been playing both sides. Feeding the enemy, getting us to move our forces into positions where we're vulnerable. The higher-ups knew, but they covered it up. I was sent to find out who, but I wasn't supposed to live to tell anyone. The silence on the other end was suffocating. It felt like time itself had stopped, hanging on the edge of her revelation. She could almost hear the F-22s above her, their engines now a distant hum, waiting for the next move. But Jenna knew it wasn't just about survival anymore. She wasn't just running from the jungle. She was running from the truth that could change everything. Are you sure you have the proof, Carter? Captain Jackson's voice cut through the tension. Because if you're right, this is bigger than we thought. The entire operation, hell, the entire defense network, could be at risk. Jenna took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around the radio. I have it. And I can prove it. The weight of what she had said hung in the air, but there was no going back now. Jenna had crossed a line, and she knew there would be no turning back. What came next could change everything. But for now, she had one goal, to stay alive long enough to make sure the truth got out. The sound of the F-22s above grew louder as they began their descent. Jenna stood up, wiping the sweat from her brow, the weight of what she had just revealed still pressing heavily on her chest. The jungle felt like a distant memory now, a place that had held her hostage for too long. As the fighter jets closed in, a sense of finality settled over her. The past months of isolation, the fear, the pain, everything she had endured, was about to be over. Jenna turned and started walking toward the open clearing, her movements slow and deliberate. Every step felt like it echoed, every branch she pushed aside a reminder of the life she had left behind. The sound of the engines intensified, then suddenly stopped. The world was silent again, and Jenna felt the weight of it settle deep in her bones. She wasn't just returning to civilization. She was stepping back into a world she no longer recognized, a world that had moved on without her. The F-22s landed, kicking up dust as they came to a halt. Two pilots stepped out, their helmets under their arms, their faces serious but tinged with relief. They didn't need to say anything at first. The simple fact that they had found her was enough. Captain Carter, one of the pilots, a woman, said, her voice thick with disbelief. "We thought we lost you for good." Jenna didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to break down, to let the weight of everything hit her. But the other part of her, the part that had survived the jungle, that had pushed through the endless nights of doubt and fear, held steady. "Not yet," Jenna replied, her voice hoarse but clear. "I'm still here." The woman nodded, glancing at the other pilot. They both seemed to understand. There was no fanfare, no hugs or cheers. There was only the task at hand. "Do you have everything you need?" the male pilot asked, eyeing the survival gear on Jenna's back. Jenna glanced down at the tattered pack, the last remnants of her struggle. She gave a small shake of her head. "Not everything, but I've got the most important part." She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out the photograph, the only thing she had left from her past. The photo of her and her father. She held it out to them. "This is the proof. Everything I found, every single thing, they can't ignore this." The male pilot took the photo, his brow furrowing as he looked at it. "We'll get this to the right people," he said quietly, his voice serious. Jenna looked at them both, her eyes scanning their faces. There was no warmth in their gaze, only duty. She knew what was at stake now. The conspiracy she had uncovered wasn't just about the lives lost in the jungle. It was about the people who had betrayed everything she had believed in. "I'm ready," Jenna said, her voice steady now, though the exhaustion lingered in her bones. "Let's get this over with." The woman nodded and turned toward the helicopter that had just landed nearby. "We got a flight back to base. You'll be debriefed there. It's time to go home." Jenna hesitated. Home. The word felt foreign on her tongue. She had been away too long, and in that time, everything had changed. But now, as the helicopter's rotor blades began to spin, the promise of return, of justice, of answers, pulled her forward.